I became a Christian when I was 30. It was about 29 years ago. And I'm going to start about 12 years before that. I was basically a lost kid, 18 years old. I was walking around Purdue University's campus, drinking a bottle of wine and crying my eyes out. So I'd been dating a girl that I met when I was a senior in high school. I met her on spring break in Fort Lauderdale. And I went down for spring break when I was a freshman at Purdue. And 2 months after that, she called me to tell me she was pregnant. And she gave me an ultimatum. She told me that either she was going to get an abortion or I married her. And all my friends were telling me, man, are you crazy, Nicholas? She lives down in Fort Lauderdale. That's her problem. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you guys are right, But I grew up very Catholic, and with a mother that used to drag me to state fairs where she'd be in the pro-life booth. And I'll never forget that. And so I didn't know what to do. And I'm walking around Purdue's campus, drinking this bottle of wine, and I'm praying to God, please, what do I do, God? What do I do? And I got this laser beam thought, and the thought was, Phil, if you have me on your side, you will not lose. And I sobered up right away. It's like slapped me back to reality. And I went back to my frat house, and I told the guys I was moving to Florida, and they're like, you're crazy, Nicholas. I said, well, whatever, it's what I'm doing. So I moved to Florida, and got married. That's my daughter, Jennifer. Jennifer's 40 years old today. Whew. It's 2 boys, grandsons. I was only married for a year and a half, but I decided to stay in Miami to be close to my daughter. And got real serious about school. Went to law school, went to UM. Canes in the 80s, man, I was there. It was awesome. And life was good. I got a good job with a good law firm. And I had been there for, about 3 years. And I was dating this girl. She was from Ireland. She was a bartender down here in Brickell. And we'd been dating for about a year. And that didn't work out. We broke up. And about 2 weeks after we broke up, she called me to tell me she was pregnant. Well, she told me she was going to get an abortion. I forced myself to say, please don't. And I say I forced myself because, boy, that would have been real easy. But we tried to make it work. We got together, and we got back together. We moved in. My son was born. His name's Kyle. He's 29. He's wonderful. And right around this time, I had met this man. He was a missionary to executives. He was a former lawyer, and he worked for Campus Crusade for Christ, and he decided to minister to people downtown. And I remember thinking, oh, God, I don't want to talk to this guy about my situation. But I agreed to meet him for breakfast. His name is Dave. And met him for breakfast at this place downtown. Walk in, there he was sitting there, and I walk over, and he goes, Phil Nicholas. He gets out of his seat, and he's a Jamaican man. He goes, hey man, good to see you, good to see you. I go, nice to see you, Dave. And as I'm sitting down, he goes, well, enough BS. I understand you have a baby. And I said, yes, I do. And he said, Phil, it's unfortunate that in times of our greatest need, we don't turn to the people that should accept us the most. And I remember looking at him, and that kind of floored me. He said, Phil, I'll be so bold as to tell you what I think you should do. I said, go ahead, man. You're on a roll. Go ahead. He said, well, the first thing you ought to do is you ought to go get your own place. You don't want to marry someone just because you got yourself in a situation. And the second thing, Phil, is you need to get to know God. Because if you get to know God, you'll be a better father, you'll be a better husband, you'll be a better friend, and you will affect generations of people. And I looked at him, and I said, what do you mean? I mean, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic grade school. I was an altar boy, Jesuit high school. Heck, I thought I knew everything there was to know. But he was talking about something different, and I did not know what he meant. The Bible says that the penalty for sin is death, physical, spiritual death. And God, being just, has to make sure the penalty's paid. And right there, I thought, well, then we're all toast. He said, but God doesn't want to leave you in that situation, so he sent his son to live the perfect life that you could not live. He came to live that for you. And then he took your sin upon himself, and he went to the cross, and he paid that penalty. Death. And to show that it was paid in full, he rose from the dead to prove it. And if you accept that, Phil, if you receive him, you become a child of God. And all of your sin, all of it, you don't surprise him, was paid by Christ at the cross. And you will begin to know him the way he intended from the very beginning. I said, look, Dave, I don't know if what you're telling me is true. But if that's true, like really true, that's the most amazing thing I could ever know. That's the most amazing thing I could ever talk about, if it's true. So I began this massive research project when I got back to Miami. I didn't know there was evidence. Evidence? When I was told that, I was a litigator, and that word meant something to me. And I was blown away. Anyway, 4 months into my research project, one day I'm reading, and I don't know what I was reading exactly. I think something out of the Bible. And I said to myself, oh my gosh, this stuff is true. And right away, I felt this pain in my chest. It was a physical pain. I knew it wasn't a heart attack, but it was physical. And it caused me to go find this guy, Dave. And when I found Dave, he looked at me with this concerned look because he could see I was serious. And I walked up to him. He goes, what's up? And I just looked at him and I said, I've done some really bad things. And he looked at me and he just nodded. He didn't come to my rescue. He took me out to lunch. And at that lunch, we talked more about what was happening to me. And then he said, I don't understand why God hasn't given you a place to live yet. I've been praying, other people that know you've been praying, and I just really think it's God's will, but I don't understand it. And I said, well, man, hey, man, it could still happen. You never know. But deep down, I was thinking, this guy really believes this stuff. Anyway, I went back to my office and my law firm, and my phone rings. It's Dave. Phil, I believe the Lord has answered our prayers in abundance. I'm like, how did I meet this guy? I go, what are you talking about? He goes, I just got beepers. I just got beeps, and I bet you this guy has a place for you. I want you to call him. By the way, my girlfriend and I, we weren't doing very well. Yeah, she didn't like this Christian thing that I was looking into. So I knew getting my own place was the right thing to do. And anyway, I called this guy up, introduced myself. He goes, yeah, you're a lawyer, right? I go, yes, sir. He goes, listen, my wife and I just moved out of Miami. We have a house there, and we'd like to sell it, but we'd like someone to live in it till we sell it. Would you be interested? Oh, and you wouldn't have to pay us any rent. And I said, I'm interested. And he goes, well, why don't you go look at it and call me back? So I hung up the phone. I was shaking, and I went to the door, and I closed the door to my office, and I had a talk with God. I said, I believe you exist. I believe that Jesus died on a cross for me and paid for all of my sin. I believe I'm forgiven. And I believe he rose from the dead. But do you really listen to us? Do you really care about the details of our life? And a few thoughts laser beamed through my brain. Phil, if I can create the universe, I can handle the details of your life. If I loved you so much to send my son to die for you, then yes, I care about the details too. And Phil, you've been sitting on the throne of your life, ruling your little kingdom. Why don't you let me sit there instead and watch what happens? Well, I felt like a little kid. Hold up my hand, basically, take me. I'm in. And a few things happened right away. Number one, I just wanted to spend time with my kids. So I did. I didn't date for 3.5 years. My first date was my wife today. For 3.5 years, that was crazy. I always felt naked if I didn't have a girlfriend, just empty. But instead, I just focused on my kids. There's a verse in the Bible that says that he will turn the father's hearts to their children. And that's what he did for me. Second thing that happened was that I used to read the Bible, and I thought it was boring. I didn't understand it. But now I was reading it, just flowing. I was getting it. I'd read till 1 o'clock in the morning, wake up at 6, 7 on adrenaline. I couldn't wait to read some more. The third thing was that I felt like I had to tell everybody what happened to me. I had to tell them what I knew. So I did. I told everybody. I told my coworkers, my friends, my family. I'm sure a lot of them thought I was crazy, but that's okay. And a number of them became Christians, and I've seen their lives change for the better. And I was now realizing what David said at that breakfast to me some months earlier, that I need to get to know God. If I get to know God, I'll be a better father, I'll be a better husband, I'll be a better friend, and I will affect generations of people. So that was 28 years ago. The Lord wasn't done with me yet. By the way, He's not done with you guys yet. He's not done. He's not done with you. I was driving home from church one day, and I get a phone call from my brother, and he goes, "Are you looking at your text messages?" I go, "What? Are you looking at your text messages?" I go, "No, what's going on?" What had happened was my niece went on Ancestry.com. She did her DNA test, and she got back her report. And that DNA test showed members of our family that she knew, but there was one man, 43-year-old man, that she didn't know. But he kind of looked like us a little bit. So she called him up and introduced herself. I'm Layla. And he came up on my Ancestry.com report. And as I understand it, he said something like, "Do you know my father? I've been looking for him for 26 years. Well, that was me. I was in a state of shock. And so that's when my attention turned to him. And we talked, and it was a very nervous first phone call. And we began to learn about each other. A week later, we had a reunion up in Indiana. I met my 4 new grandkids, his two daughters and 2 sons. The older daughter thought she was cute, and she hugged me and she said, "Hi, Grandpa." Anyway, I'd like you to meet him. His name is Jason. So he's going to come on up here. He's hating me right now. Okay. He's not going to say anything either. He'll be mortified if I ask him to say anything. Unless you want to say something. Yeah. So, guys, I'm his father. This is my son.